Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of Toshi's Debates. Quite looking forward to this one here. We've got TinkleMcSprnkle who's decided to challenge me. This is going to be the very first one I've ever done, so I'm quite excited about this. As it is, I think we've had over like 1,000 people viewing the post I put out on X, so this should be quite good. So let's crack on with it. But before we start, experience the best of both worlds today at betbitcoinsv.com, the best casino and sports betting on chain. Have a little flutter in private using the original protocol and genuine Bitcoin. Right, let's cue the music.
SirToshi, like a cowboy in the West, riding on the blockchain that they call the very best. 1 million strong, them transactions flying free. Just wait for the terror node, you'll surely see.
Here we go. TinkleMcSprnkle, are you there?
Yeah, my name is Patrick Mockridge.
Okay. All right, mate. Well, if you want to introduce yourself to the audience, that'd be great. Go for it.
Okay, my name is Patrick Mockridge. I used to work for the Bitcoin Association as an educator.
Okay.
I was forced out, and anyone is free to view my termination letter on the blockchain, which is on the blockchain. I will do my best to share receipts of all of this stuff that I'm saying today. And I can't post on X under my real name because certain BSV people attacked me and mass reported me and took that old account down. Okay, but my name is Patrick Mockridge.
Okay, cool. And do you want to just tell people your intention for challenging me? Because you initially said that I wouldn't challenge you in a million years, and yet next day.
Because last time I engaged you on my old account, it was through Craig, and Craig was mocking my religion backhandedly. And part of the reason I got forced out of the BA was over religious stuff with Joel and someone else who's I won't name. And then Craig was jumping in the comments making fun of my religion. And then you blocked me.
Oh, well, yeah, but I block everybody, mate. Like, no hard feelings there.
Okay. But, so that's why I thought you would never debate. Because I thought you were a 100% Craig Maxey and someone who, justifies, Craig's just outrageous behavior to a number of people. But, I'm glad you're here. And I really respect you for, taking the time and coming here and having the discussion.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Well, I saw on your profile, on your TinkleMcSprnkle profile, that you've got a picture of Aaron Russo up there, saying the end goal is to get everybody chipped to control the whole society, to have the bankers and the elite people control the world. So you must be awake to what's going on.
I try to be. But what's that saying? Trust but verify. Okay, there's a lot of people who say they're awake, okay, and they do the limited hangout thing, and they do it for the money. And there's very, very big money in that. Like Stu Peters, for example, was saying he turned down like $4 million a year at Goldco to make his Palestine documentary. But both sides are a grift. It's like the real Palestine side know he's trying to grift off of Palestine now. And Goldco, there's numerous accounts talking about how Goldco pretended to sell gold. They didn't really sell gold. They sold something else. They packaged it in a bunch of sort of QAnon grifting patter and fleeced people for like hundreds of millions of dollars. So awake, there's levels of awake, just like there's levels of due diligence, levels of audit, quality assurance, and so forth.
Yeah, got ya. So we may as well start off with common ground. So obviously there's that. I mean, how big of a conspiracy nut are you? Because I would say I'm a proper conspiracy.
That's a very leading question. I'm not really a conspiracy nut.
Well, yeah, but do other people consider you one? Because I would be considered by my family and friends to be a massive one.
Okay. Well, that's you.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, yeah, where do you consider yourself to be on that scale?
I just told you I don't consider myself to be one.
Okay, so but are you a conspiracy theorist or just a conspiracy factist? Because I'm only mocking myself because I've actually done the research and I know that it's fact. But all these people who haven't done the research, who are living in ignorance, would call me a theorist. When all you have to do is follow the money. You still there? We've lost contact there. If you can, if you can somehow get back on, I've got a few questions. What?
Hello, are you there?
Hey, there we go. Back in the
Oh,
room.
because it's in my browser. My iPad locked out, and then
That's all
okay.
right.
So I'll make sure to touch my screen intermittently to stop my screen locking out.
There we go. Yeah, just
So-
got a few questions in the chat. Can you see it? What Bitcoin did said. What Bitcoin did? That can't be Peter McCormack, surely. Anyway, the question from what Bitcoin did says, what is his religion? If he doesn't worship Jesus Christ, it's demonic and deserves to be mocked. Okay, I mean, I'm just reading that straight out. Do you mind?
Okay, well, I'm a confirmed. I took First Communion as a Catholic, and I never denounced Catholicism, but I found Buddhism to bring me closer to Jesus. But if people disagree with that and want to call it demonic, then that's on them.
It's all right. I think it
what Craig
was.
did.
I think it was just general curiosity. Asking that question. But what was it? So what is it that you think we might disagree on? Because just before we went live here, what you said, you thought I was disingenuine. And
Yeah, I think you're disingenuous. You're framing what is a network communication problem with Bitcoin, which is that it's a single thread into what I call it like a conspiracy theory, and framing that conspiracy theory to the benefit of BSV when it is more just of a natural engineering problem with Bitcoin.
What problem is that?
That it's single threaded. Okay, so for network systems to scale, they need to be concurrent, and they need to have a concept of process calculus or an agent model. Okay, so if I'm buying a packet of
you're off again, mate. You might need to. There we go. Back in the room.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, this is a technical problem that I'm going to have to keep just touching my iPad to keep it live. So
do you want to? Well, you can adjust the settings in your screen just so that it stays on, rather than going off every 10 minutes.
It's going to be too much of a hassle. I'll just manage it manually. So
all right.
Basically, everything in Bitcoin boils down to a single thread. So
what's your definition of that? What does that mean?
So Bitcoin is one block after another.
Mm-hmm.
It's a single sequential thread.
Yep.
So whether it's Turing complete or not, or so forth, everything that happens in the Bitcoin network has to be funneled down to a single thread.
Yep.
Okay, that is not necessarily the case with other blockchain technologies that theoretically exist or do exist today. So if you look at the Bitcoin Cash Independence block ordinal, which I can share the link to, the Bitcoin Cash Independence block ordinal said that, okay, like Bitcoin is a 3 or 4 threaded system now, and each of the 3 or 4 threads have different architectures that do different things. So they took a pragmatic view. They have some awareness of process calculus and threading limitations, and don't say, oh, Bitcoin can scale unboundedly. They just say, no, the different threads work according to different principles to do different things. What BSV says is there's one true Bitcoin. It can scale unboundedly and it can do everything, but that is untrue.
So what can't it do?
It can't be decentralized and scale unboundedly for a start because it's a single thread. So maximum unbounded scaling equals maximum centralization, for example. Because centralization is always a cheat code to scale. And that's essentially what this Mandala network Terranode thing is, in my view.
It doesn't have to be decentralized. All it has to be is commoditized. There's a big difference. Like decentralized is more generic. It can be applied to anything, which is like, you could say a multinational company is decentralized because it's distributed. Whereas in order for a network to have common value and to ensure that no one has any central point of authority, control, or failure, it just simply has to be commoditized. And in terms of unbounded scale, it just has to scale for the entire market that it's built for. So it doesn't necessarily have to be completely infinite. It just has to scale in order to consume the entire market and the entire market going forward into the future. And we're gone again. If you can try and bring yourself back. You'll have to click your screen again.
Yeah, okay.
There we go.
So the Bitcoin does contain a principle of process calculus in terms of the SirToshi being the minimal limit of parallel peer-to-peer communication. Okay, but it's not good enough to scale unboundedly. Okay, what you need is an agent model that has certain problems, but ideally what you need is the row calculus.
Yeah, but what do you mean? What do you mean, like an agent model?
A model where every person on the network has their own specific identity, and each specific identity operates concurrently of every other identity unless they explicitly ask to interact with one another.
Well, they don't necessarily need an identity because identity is firewalled from the blockchain, like Craig said. All you need to do is know the individual that you are transacting with, and they're the only people who know, because the only thing that can actually identify you and prove that you send the transaction is the signature combined with the individual who knows who you are.
Okay, well, what have you heard of the process like the concept of process calculus before? Because I shared a Wikipedia link with you yesterday. Have you heard of it, process calculus before?
I have not.
Okay. So if you're building scalable systems like blockchains and saying that they can scale unboundedly, and you don't know what an actor model is or what the process calculi are, from a fundamental computer science basis, you're not doing that. It's like even in like Microsoft, Google, all these companies, like Microsoft BizTalk, the guy who invented that, and the row calculus states explicitly that for systems like blockchains to scale, they need a concept of process calculus.
Okay.
And again, this was a question that was never answered when I worked for.
And you're out of the room again. There we go.
Okay, it was never answered when I worked for the BA.
Well, the Bitcoin Association don't actually know too much.
You just repeat what Craig says. How do you know what Craig says is right? I've learned this from people who've done contract work for DARPA, who've worked in deep R&D for the U.S. government, who've designed scalable B2B systems at like enormous scale that were groundbreaking. And you repeat what a guy who has made 400 plus forgeries in court has said, who's backed by money. No one knows where it comes from. People say Calvin Ayre's money. Can people even prove that it is Calvin Ayre's money after he was hauled up by the feds for money laundering? No one can. And then you go on Reddit, and it's like, oh, there's this infinite money glitch being poured all over everything. Okay, whose money is it? You can't prove where the money comes from. The guy who you're repeating has been found to be a pathological liar in court. And you don't know anything about what people who actually build these systems in real life, what the fundamentals of those systems are.
I know what they are. And I didn't
say, you've just told me you've never heard of the actor model or process calculi before I sent you the link on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Okay, so what, you're going to go to like Imperial College and Cambridge and Oxford and these people and tell them, yeah, I can build an infinitely scalable blockchain, but I only heard about the process calculi today.
No.
The room.
No.
Okay, it's just facts. I'm sorry to say. Okay.
Yeah, but I come from the angle of how can you commoditize data? Because if you can actually commoditize data, you can commoditize a resource, then that can actually be used as a medium of exchange. That's the way I came at it.
Why do we need to commodify everything?
Because it needs common value. Well, it's like this. So, in order for something to be, well, if you want to know what the most valuable money in the world is going to be, what you have to do is commoditize the most useful resource. So the question is, can data be commoditized, and how do you do it? And so I wasn't.
Well, if you read Jaron Lanier, he explains very well how data is commodified, and it leads to these kind of conspiracy theory echo chambers of behavior modification. It already happens.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like you don't actually understand it.
Do a different version of it.
Well,
Why don't I understand?
What's your interpretation of commoditizing data?
It's contained within an American Society of Mechanical Engineers paper published in 2020.
No.
Saved to the blockchain, and I'll happily share the receipt to that.
Yeah, I mean that's not how you commoditize data. The way you commoditize anything.
Well, how do you know? You haven't read the paper. So this is an institutionally recognized paper published in the American Society of Mechanical Engineers journal on commoditizing data. That's what I believe. You haven't read it.
Yeah, but you said that's where I don't deal in beliefs. I deal in facts.
Yeah. So what have you got that you've published, or a different published paper that has an idea of this that's different?
Yeah, well, it's very basic. So first of all, you've got the Howey test that identifies a security. But a security is just simply issued. It's anything that is one step removed from the item itself, issued by a group or organization or whoever that will back up your claim of entitlement. That's why it's called a security, because it secures your entitlement to whatever it is. So a ticket secures your entitlement to enter a concert. A token secures your entitlement to enter an arcade. A gift card secures your entitlement to shop and buy on Amazon.
Test of gravity, okay?
So say that again.
Of thermodynamics. Okay, there's deeper principles at play. Something isn't just true because someone securitizes it. Things are true because they are.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is what I'm getting at. People don't understand how you commoditize data. Like they don't know the difference, literally, between currency and money.
Well,
for example.
Already do. Okay, so here's an example of commoditizing data. The engineering office of Wood Group or Bechtel or Carillion, they collapsed, or Babcock. Okay, engineers sign documents, okay, that stake their reputation on the accuracy of what is in the document. Okay, and those documents work in a directed acyclic graph over time to keep a digital twin of the intended asset alive on the balance sheet until it is built, until detailed design and construction and maintenance. Okay, so we already do assetize data, and that's the entire job of.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about asset. I'm not talking about making something an asset.
Professional engineers. Well, asset, commodity, same thing. Okay?
No, it's not.
Professional engineers already do this for a living and have done it for hundreds of years by signing documents. Okay, so what the blockchain does is it makes it permanent and immutable, and you replace the paper signatures with digital signatures, and hey ho, it does the same thing. Okay, but you want to turn it into a grabbler thing and make it about the Howey test and fintech. Okay, I was a member of the Institute of Chemical Engineers. Okay, I achieved that in 2013 with a specialism in safety, and that's specifically why the intersection of those skills and my blockchain understanding is why the BA hired me. Okay, but then when I started asking questions, that's also why the BA fired me. Okay, because it was this grabbler attitude. Okay, you have to do the basics right. And people don't want to look at the basics. They want to turn everything into a security straight away. That's sort of this NFT grabbler bubble, this FTX bubble, SVB bubble. Everything has to be a financial asset. No, things move from being intangible to tangible through the knowledge and expertise of engineers. Okay, BSV did not want that. They did not want me asking questions. They didn't want Raylene and Shatters asking questions. They wanted the money to just fall from on high and for the clout to beget clout and for them all to be podcasters, okay, and not engineers. That's why Terranode still doesn't work. That's why you know nothing about process calculus or the actor model of any of this, while people who've had 10 to 100 times less of the resources that BSV has had available to it are putting out product now that is 100 times better than BSV ever could be.
Oh, can you name one?
Yeah, AO Computer on top of Arweave.
Oh.
Also, check out Alex Network. Sui is also very interesting. There's a number of things coming out. Innovations happen very fast, and while you've all been navel gazing and talking about the Howey test and all this, other people have gone off and actually done the real engineering.
Yeah, but they've wasted their time. Yeah, they've engineered without any fundamental understanding. Because if they're building on a securitized network, then it's a complete waste of time. You may as well just like develop on, Facebook or something like that.
Okay, well, can we get back to fundamentals here? And I asked to begin with, what do you believe is fundamentally wrong with Bitcoin? So I've explained what I believe is fundamentally wrong with Bitcoin. You have not explained that to me yet.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's amazing.
Okay, so BTC, what's fundamentally wrong with BTC and BCH?
Oh, okay. So with BTC, what is fundamentally wrong with it is, first of all, they introduced the 1 megabyte block cap in 2010. I think it was like 15th of June, something like that, with the sole purpose of restricting the network so that limitations and restriction could be manufactured and the network be manipulated. So they purposely done that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is obviously they've implemented SegWit, which segregates the digital signatures from the transaction data, meaning that you've lost common accountability. So whoever it was, as in like Greg Maxwell or Peter Wool, that segregated the signatures from the transaction data, they were downloading them onto their private servers. They have complete control of the network because they are now accountable to nobody because they are the ones who are controlling the signatures. They can reassign blame, they can make changes on the network that nobody else would know about. Common accountability is lost, so therefore it's now centrally controlled under them. So therefore it's economically worthless to me Because why would I use a network that somebody else can manipulate and control?
Okay, so they centralize the network under their control.
Yeah.
Okay, so who owns Tal?
I guessing it's probably majority owned by Calvin Air, I guess.
Yeah, who funds the BA?
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing it's probably
Who
a combination of
who funds CoinGeek?
Calvin.
Calvin. Gorilla Pool. It said on the Reddit post that slated Enchain that Kurt is entirely controlled by Calvin. What do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, so the Calvin, then Agar Hansen's whistleblowing report, again Calvin. No one knows where Calvin's money comes from, really. Everyone assumes it comes from some sort of gambling empire. But how is he spending like $100 million a year on all this stuff when he's not allowed to even have a gambling empire? And that was part of his agreement with.
Oh, yeah, you've gone again.
Okay, so how is Calvin dropping like $100 million on this stuff to own Tal, Gorilla Pool, Kurt, CoinGeek, Lightning Sharks? He bought out Money Button, so that was basically like the whole basis of the ecosystem. He bought that out.
He didn't buy out Money Button. That was Fabric.
Okay, but then, you know, what happened to that ecosystem? You can't use Beco Media anymore. There's a whole bunch of BSV apps, like Twitch is gone, Electrum SV is gone, and all you have is all this money from Calvin Air, and everyone says this from his gambling empire, but then part of his deal with the feds was that he was not allowed to have a gambling empire.
Yeah, but what's that got to do with Bitcoin?
It has to do with centralization of Bitcoin. Okay, you're talking about like BTC has been centralized by Blockstream and Greg Maxwell and Adam Back and all this stuff. Hasn't Calvin done exactly the same thing to BSV? And doesn't that show that just Bitcoin is, as a concept, as a single-threaded system, is just so open to being sequestered and co-opted by, whether it's by Calvin Air or by Blockstream?
Well, no. In one simple word, because so long as the network is commoditized, it doesn't matter who does what. Data can only be commoditized one way, and you cannot change that. And that's the way that is outlined and described in the Bitcoin white paper at the very beginning, that has those 5 elements, which is economic competition, a chain of digital signatures, unbounded scale, a fixed token supply, and then a locked protocol. That is it. So long as you don't change.
Why is it that some of my Beco transactions aren't available on what's on chain, but some are? So it appears to me there's been like selective clipping of some of my Beco transactions.
Well, is that to do with the miners not processing them?
I don't know. I just know I have some Beco transactions that did exist a year ago that don't exist now. I go and look in them on chain. They've been clipped.
But they're still on chain, even though they've been clipped.
The hash of the transaction is there, but the data in it is not.
The data will be stored somewhere. It has to be. Can't not be.
Okay, well, maybe you can help me with that later. Okay,
Yeah,
I have another question. When Satoshi says peer-to-peer electronic cash in the title of the white paper, do you believe that CBDCs are a valid interpretation of that, as Enchain and Craig Wright do?
Well, a CBDC is a currency, and a currency is issued, and all you've got is a security that's issued on the Bitcoin network that can't be deleted. I certainly don't agree with CBDCs, but if the other cabal are going to push it through, then we may as well have a CBDC on BSV, because then they can't ring fence transactions, and they can't stop and halt transactions. And also we can monitor their inflation, so we can at least see what they're doing. So it's the best option as a way of, at least kind of like bringing the cabal out into the light so we can see what they're up to.
Well, people like Paul Ryan and Howard Lutnick would say stablecoins are a better way to run things than CBDCs. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I'd say they're biased, and I'd say they don't know the difference between money and currency. So you're
more pro central bank than you're pro tether.
No. I would say the opposite way around. If I had a choice between a central bank and tether, I would be tether, because at least I can see what tether is doing and how much tethers they're printing.
Okay. So with that being said, what is your opinion on like the whole fallout of the Fairway brief? Because it seems to me that like not everyone was entirely innocent, and this is sort of where I know like Kristen doesn't like some of my posts. Holden not blocked me because Kristen was selling digital identity tech on the BSV blockchain to the Tory cabinet at the same time as Christine Long, who advertises herself as a World Economic Forum digital ID expert, was working at nChain, and the whole thing around Craig Wright was going on, which has since been either he's produced 400 forgeries or 300 forgeries or 200 or 100, but he has lied. And I think there's
lied about what?
Well, in my opinion, about being Satoshi to begin with.
Yeah, but that's an opinion. I mean, people can agree to disagree on opinions.
Now. Okay, so it's also an opinion, according to a forensic expert, that he produced 400 plus forgeries. So you've got a World Economic Forum digital ID expert working alongside Craig Wright at nChain, and you're doing CBDCs.
Well, what expert are you referring to there?
I've forgotten his name, but I'm sure someone like Arthur Van Pelt would be able to tell me who his name is. So there's court-recognized forensic experts. Okay.
Are you talking about Patrick Madden?
Yeah, I think that's his name. Yeah.
Okay. Well, but I mean, your definition. Anyway, you're calling him an expert. I mean, that again, that's another matter of opinion.
Okay, so there's all these opinions. Okay, so everyone has all these opinions, and then like Kristen. Do you think it's an opinion that Kristen was selling digital ID tech to the Tory cabinet, like was described in The Guardian?
I don't know. I didn't witness anything. All I've got is all I know is what I read, and
So do you think do you think so? On balance of probabilities, is that true or is that not true?
I think there's probably some truth in it.
Okay, so there's some truth in it, and then do you think that sheds more light on what was going on with the Fairway brief?
What is that? What's the Fairway brief?
That was the Kristen Ager-Hansen's whistleblowing report on his perceived malfeasance of Craig Wright, Stephen Matthews, and Calvin Ayre.
Okay, well, I mean, I do not.
It was
trust
on the
Christian
page of the Norwegian Financial Times. Okay, it was a pretty important BSV story last year. I don't know how much you know about it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know I've heard about the shenanigans going on, but it doesn't detract away from the elements that commoditize data that make Bitcoin.
Okay, so I'll just take that as a no comment. So, well, I'll jump forward in my questions then. Okay. If BSV is true Bitcoin and or government and enterprise utility blockchain, then the governance org must disclose the risks and make best reasonable efforts to mitigate the risks in the UTXO chain. The transaction histories, yes or no. This is based on the empirical fact confirmed by both Ty and Kurt that freshly mined sats of BSV sell for a significant premium to old sats, showing that there's a material risk in the UTXO histories. Okay, so given that price differential, and this is where I fell out with Brendan Lee, do you think the governance org should disclose those risks and explain?
You've gone again, mate.
I'm back again.
There we
Okay,
go.
so do you think the governance org should explain why freshly mined sats from Tal and Gorilla Pool sell for a significant premium to legacy sats, say, mined in like 2010?
Well, what's the governance org? I mean, Bitcoin is a commodity, so therefore it doesn't need governance.
Well, that's the Bitcoin Association is the governance org of BSV blockchain.
Well, governance isn't probably a suitable word, because it's kind of like saying, oh, we're gonna have a governance model for gold and silver, like gold is gold and silver is silver. You know, the only thing you can really regulate about commodities is the futures trading of it, which is why you have the CFTC. But there's no governance over a commodity. You would only need governance over a security, because it's controlled. So therefore you would need governance over those people who control it.
Okay, so what do you believe is the role of the BA then? I suppose that's a better place to start.
So the role of the BA is to guide people as to which one is the genuine chain. So let's say if somebody tries to 51% attack it, and a 51% is just simply somebody or someone or whatever, another entity, creating an alternative protocol and trying to place that on the chain with more proof of work on it, so that the miners will go, oh, that's the chain we need to follow. But that's an alternative protocol. So the BA's job is just simply to referee it and ways of and go, actually, this is the one here. You don't need to go through all the rigmarole of trying to identify it yourself because it's over here.
So it's to sell BSV?
No. It's just to guide the miners. So if anybody does try to 51% attack it, the BA will just be recognizing the protocol.
Why does Calvin Ayre basically own the BA and make most of his money from mining from BTC, as was disclosed in the Fairway brief?
Well, it doesn't really it doesn't affect the protocol of Bitcoin at all. Like all the shenanigans that you're talking about.
Wait. Isn't that a massive conflict of interest that the guy who makes most of his money from Bitcoin, who funds this governance organization that you're saying that's their number one job, in the market he completely ignores it, but he gives it $20 million a year?
Well, miners chase profit. Miners have got no political allegiance in this whatsoever. So miners can literally pick and choose, but those miners who are the smartest, that actually understand how you commoditize data, will understand what the most valuable protocol is. And those who recognize it, you will never ever get them to switch over. I mean, maybe like Mike Calvin might switch over.
Well, there you go, because if you can make those OTC markets for freshly mined sats, you can sell them at a premium. Okay, that other miners who are casual miners will not know about. So you have Calvin, who recognizes the material risks in the UTXO chain from Silk Road, from Mt. Gox, linking back to Roger Ver, Charlie Shrem, Eric Voorhees, Truth Labs on X has done amazing work on this. All corrupt FBI, DOJ, all this stuff. And then you have Calvin Ayre, who cut a deal with the feds over money laundering, then playing both sides with the freshly mined sats for the provenance applications in government and enterprise, making 50% premium on that, but also mining BTC and also not really caring. And then also not anyone being able to say where his money comes from, because he's not supposed to be making money from gambling.
Yeah, but what's this got to do with the protocol of Bitcoin?
A lot of things.
Okay.
Because for my argument is that because Bitcoin, as I said it at the beginning, because Bitcoin's a single-threaded system, at least BCH in their independence block had the honesty to say it's a single-threaded system and we need multi-threads for multiple applications.
What do you mean, multiple
valid.
chains?
Yeah, multiple versions of Bitcoin. That's the BCH independence block view. What BSV did is a mirror image of BTC, in my opinion. You've got Calvin owning the whole thing. He makes money on all ways. He's on inside deals selling freshly mined OTC sats. He knows all the problems with Shrem, Roger Ver. You remember the original fork? It was Bitcoin Cash. There's receipts on that. I can share them. And Roger's locked up over this. While Calvin was on a major money laundering rap, same with someone like Ian Grigg, who was involved with eGold. They don't go to prison, but somehow Roger Ver does. And then you're like...
What were you going again, mate?
And you're like, what does going to prison and making money playing both sides have to do with Bitcoin? It has everything to do with Bitcoin. That is what Bitcoin becomes at scale because people game it. Because it's a single thread that you can co-opt and monopolize and rent seek from. Whereas what you need is a concept of process calculus and concurrency for proper scaling. Bitcoin doesn't have concurrency because everything you need to do on BSV in particular, you have to go through Calvinaire. You fall out with Calvinaire, you're out. There's no way back for you. Raylene is an example of that. Shatters is an example of that. I'm an example of that. Ryan X. Charles is an example of that.
Yeah, mate, I got kicked out. I got kicked out from CoinGeek.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, but it doesn't... The fact that you've got some bad eggs in CoinGeek doesn't change the protocol of Bitcoin.
No, it's not bad eggs. It's that Calvinaire has bought the thing on the monopoly board. And it's his. It's not yours. Okay? It's not everyone's. He's commodified it for himself.
No. You can't. Because he was like that.
He did. He already has.
He can't. It was like that from the beginning. He hasn't changed anything. And anybody can build on it.
Okay, well, if you want to take the Truth Labs, check out Truth Labs Boring Sleuth on X. First, it was the corrupt investigation of Mt. Gox. Then it was the corrupt investigation of Silk Road. Free Ross Ulbricht. Okay, then it decided to fork into Tether Coin and Bitcoin Cash, where Roger and Calvin were simpatico. Okay, now Roger's locked up. Calvin cut a deal with the feds. He's somehow not locked up. When no one knows where his money comes from, when he was sending Kristen to sell this stuff to Tory cabinet ministers and all the rest. Okay, in that UTXO history, you got drug dealing, you got corrupt officials, particularly in New Hampshire. You've got the buying off of authorities. That's what Calvinaire represents. That's what you can't see. That's why Roger Ver is locked up while Calvinaire walks the streets when he's just as complicit in this as Howard Lutnick is and all the rest. Okay, it's a single thread, and every thread has been bought out, monopolized, like on the Monopoly board.
Yeah, but you know how I said, like, what's that got to do with the protocol of Bitcoin? I'll say it again. What's that got to do with the price of eggs? Nothing. It doesn't change anything.
It has everything to do with the price of eggs, because if people come in and buy all the chickens and cull everyone else's chickens, then they jack the price of the eggs up by 1,000%, and you're forced to pay if you don't have anything else to eat. And that's exactly what's happened in Bitcoin.
Yeah, but if you try to monopolize all the hens, the price of hens is just going to go up. It's a bit like gold, you know. You can buy.
What do you think corruption is?
Well, yeah, but how? Well, let me say it another way. How can you corrupt gold?
You can't, but
Well,
you
exactly.
can.
Same
But
thing with Bitcoin.
FDR did say, hand in all your gold or else. And everyone did hand in all their gold in 1970 something.
Yeah, but you say everyone. That was only the people in the United States.
Okay, but that was all that mattered at the time.
Didn't make any difference to the people in Britain or the rest of the world.
It did. It made a huge difference. You know what Bretton Woods is?
No, I didn't say it made. I didn't say it didn't make a difference. I said nobody else had to hand in their gold. That was
okay, but yeah, you corner enough of the market in the right place in the strategic position, and you dictate the terms. Okay, that's business too.
Yeah, but
you're still working from the Ludwig von Mises Hayek textbook and ideas about what securities law is. Okay, in real life, you budge in on someone else's territory in a market, you will get hurt. Okay, that's where the monopoly and violence thing comes in. That's why you probably need to reread Law's Order by Friedman. Okay, it ultimately boils down to who can enforce it. Okay, and if you can enforce fraud, if someone like Calvin Ayres made a deal with the feds, okay, such that Roger Ver goes to prison, he doesn't. Okay, you need to think in these terms. Then how does that affect the price? Roger Ver never did a single thing wrong, but you can point to a lot of things, very dodgy things that Calvin did wrong. He's scot-free. Why? Because he's buying off politicians here in our country. You're not asking questions about that. He's linked in with gambling, money laundering. Go look into that.
Yeah, but it sounds to me like you're upset about other things. Like, I'm only interested in Bitcoin.
Yeah, but it's a single-threaded thing, and it's been bought out by Calvin Ayres.
It hasn't been bought out by Calvin Ayres.
It has. It absolutely has.
How?
Who owns CoinGeek? Who owns the BA? Who owns
What's
Enchain?
that got to do with Bitcoin?
Who owns... So the governance org is owned by Calvin. The patenting and technology thing is owned by Calvin. All the media and communications are owned by Calvin. You step out of line, you're out.
Yeah, but
Joshua Hensley, great example of that.
It's got nothing to do. That's got nothing to do with Bitcoin. It's got nothing to do with it.
No, I think the game of monopoly and the economic principles of that Henry George highlighted a long time ago have a lot to do with single-threaded systems and the economics of them, and rent seeking and gaming those systems.
Well, when you say like a single thread, it's like data can only be commoditized one way. There is no other way it can be done, at all.
No, but it doesn't have to be done on a single thread. Okay, go to bottega.arweave.net. Okay.
Do you want to just send me the link? I'll click on it.
Yeah, I'll send you another link. That is decentralized exchange, all on chain. The code for the front end is all on chain.
Yeah, but it's not about being decentralized. It's about being commoditized. There's a big difference. So not only does the network have to be commoditized, the network itself has to go through a process of commoditization itself.
Yeah, and Calvin Ayres has commoditized BSV completely.
He hasn't. You can't. No one can commoditize anything, because if they commoditize it, they don't own it.
Howard Lutnick, Adam Back, Greg Maxwell commodified BTC.
No, they didn't. They securitized it.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, to me, this is just semantics. They own that single thread. Then BCH took a pragmatic view, says this is a multi-threaded system, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Roger Ver is going to prison because of that, but I think BCH still makes sense. Your view is just semantics. You want to change words around and then just say, okay, we're BTC now and we have that market cap. But that's not how it works. You just want to say, oh, commodity, security, contracts. You know, it's just semantics. No one cares. In the market, no one cares. Okay.
They might not care now, but I'm telling you they will care in the future because it will make a massive difference. Look, I'm just going to send you just 2 articles that I've written here. So the first one is the Toshi test to determine a digital commodity. And then I'm just going to send you another one, which is the Bitcoin, the protocol extracted from the white paper, which is how you commoditize data.
Okay, and I'll give them a read, and I will give you my opinion.
There we go. Yeah, so it's like arguing over, you know, like aluminium or zinc or copper being painted gold. It's just like, you know, I'm not interested in any of these other stones or rocks or other metals that have been painted gold. I'm only interested in gold, and nobody can change gold. They can try and persuade you that something else is gold, but they can't change gold. And if they did change gold, it wouldn't be gold. That's the same with commoditizing data through Bitcoin. If they could,
but where does it say anything about gold apart from it's mined, so it's like gold in the Bitcoin white paper? And don't a lot of BSV people have an issue with BTC calling itself digital gold as well?
Well, they can call it whatever they want. It's a piece of shite. It's been securitized. BTC is a digital security, and something can only have value if it's a digital commodity.
But the whole banking industry proves that is false, because the banking industry was created to securitize gold, and then that's what they've done. Again.
Yeah.
And then you're using the gold analogy in a different way. What does Bitcoin even have to do with gold? It's just numbers on computers. Okay, gold is real in the meat space.
I'm not saying it's got anything to do with it. I'm just, in the same way that, you know, coffee is a commodity because it's grown, gold is a commodity because it's extracted, silver is a commodity because it's extracted. It's a commodity
because everyone drinks it every morning to put up with the crappy day they're going to have.
No, a commodity is, I mean, you can see what commodity means from the word. It's first of all something that's common, which means it's only ever been extracted or grown, so there's no human barrier to entry to accessing it. I mean, there might be economic and, you know, geographical boundaries, but so long as they're not human, yeah, that's all right. Then it's been itemized, so coffee is bagged, water is bottled, oil is barreled, and then it's been uniquely identified so that you then can have a personal claim on it, and you can then use it. Okay, so they're
extracted concurrently. They exist concurrently, unlike the Bitcoin blockchain, which exists sequentially. Okay, so there is a human barrier, and in BSV, that human barrier manifests as Calvinaire, who has monopolized it.
There's no human barrier because anybody can add hash rate to the network.
Every single bit of the ecosystem. He owns Block Dojo. He holds to ransom every startup in Block Dojo, Enchain, the BA. Okay, this is basic Henry George. This is basic the game of Monopoly and what it turns into. And Calvinaire won the game. And you're still... Okay, there's no human barrier to me going and digging up clay in my back garden.
Yeah.
Because I can do that concurrently of everything else. I can't build anything on BSV because I need to ask permission from Calvinaire on the infrastructure side. Yes, yes, you do.
It's a locked problem. It's a locked protocol. You can build.
SB shut down. That's why Twet shut down. That's why every single startup in Block Dojo failed, because they hold you to ransom on the back end. That is not a commodity. There's no empirical evidence of this BSV thing you're talking about being a commodity. No, you have to ask permission at every stage. Alex Fauvel was biting my ear off last year at LBC 2023. Is saying this exact stuff. It's not me saying this. It's actual startups in Block Dojo. It's the people who built Twitch, who tried to build anything on BSV. It's Ryan X Charles. It's everyone. There's no actual empirical evidence that says what you're saying is correct. The empirical evidence says that Calvin monopolized BSV because Bitcoin is a single-threaded system, and pretty much all threads of that system, according to the Bitcoin Cash Independence block, have been sequestered and monopolized. And Roger Ver going to prison is like the icing on the cake of that. That's the reality.
Well, let's. I'll explain sort of Bitcoin. The competitiveness of the network is a bit like Formula One. So even though all the Formula One racing teams are trying to race each other and beat one another, the fact is that if the other racing teams don't exist, there is no competition and there is no Formula One. So although they want to beat them, they still want to make sure that the other teams can compete, so that F1 exists and it's a valuable product. It's the same with Bitcoin. The Bitcoin miners are competing with one another, but at the same time, they need to ensure that the other mining operations can stay in business.
But they don't need to ensure that. When Bitcoin was being empty block mined in early 2023, late 2022, to my knowledge, Craig Wright called it financial terrorism.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does Formula One and grassing on people for financial terrorism for opportunistically mining another token? How do they correlate? Okay, normally Formula One, there's rules where you ignored a red flag. Okay, you get a points deduction, and you maybe have to start from the back in the next race. But you don't get SWAT teamed by people and people trying to report you to the bloody cops for being a terrorist. So what's the deal there?
Well, empty block mining is miners shooting themselves in the foot, because the block reward gets cut in half every 210,000 blocks and eventually goes to zero. Bitcoin is an economic model, and without utility, without transactions, the network can't survive, and the miners need transactions in order to win the block fee. So those miners who are empty block mining and refusing to process transactions are shooting themselves in the foot.
But maybe they don't want to accept transactions because there's a material risk in the UTXO chain, and they don't want to accept those sats. They just want the fresh sats, which sell at a premium.
Well, so this is where
this is not these questions are not enforced anywhere in the Bitcoin white paper. Okay, the only answer the BA has is to report people to the police and send SWAT teams after them. And you call it like a fair competition, and it's all Satoshi planned it all out. Okay, but I don't think Satoshi would be making posts on Twitter calling people terrorists for empty mining blocks on. That's just bad engineering. It's not, it's just you've engineered your thing badly.
No, not really.
Why not change the hashing algorithm? You could easily do that, but no, because it's not about that.
Oh yeah, it's not about the hashing algorithm, but it's like all the miners have to acknowledge that they are in Formula One, and without transactions, the network collapses. So any miners being complete douchebags and not actually processing transactions within blocks.
Don't accept Craig Wright's axiom that empty block miners are terrorists, then BSV collapses. Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't call them terrorists. I'd call them douchebags. But I would say that they're purposely nefarious, because the only miners that would mine blocks without any transactions in them are miners that do not need to be economically sustained, which means they're probably being funded by the banks, because the banks can print an unlimited amount of fiat currency to fund operations to do that. So therefore, that is economic terrorism.
Okay, what, like Calvin dumping like 100 million, 200 million bucks a year into the BSV ecosystem, no one knows where it goes, and him undermining basically everyone who tries to build on it. Same sort of terrorism. Same thing.
Not really, because all he's using is a fiat currency medium of exchange that people are currently beholden to. So it's a capitalist system. You know, if I mean, this is why the central banks have got to go, because they're committing securities fraud on everybody, because they can print an unlimited amount of currency at everybody else's expense, and therefore, you know, there's no politician they can't pay. You know, there's no hitman they can't pay. There's no politician they can't bribe. You know, there's no resources that they can't afford. Because they're committing
you act
securities.
like Calvin and these people are on a different team. When N-Chain is employing World Economic Forum digital ID experts to implement World Economic Forum digital IDs on Bitcoin, on a private patented Bitcoin software that's centralized in order to scale unboundedly, that Calvin Air has already monopolized. That's why the Fairway brief came out, because Calvin had pushed out Craig. Craig has served his purpose with his sort of con job thing. Okay, and then everyone else was starting to ask too many questions. Like Craig was this red herring, and then Calvin comes in and buys the whole thing. You don't even know where his money comes from. You act like Calvin is on a different team to the central banks when he's selling them directly central bank digital currencies and asking for a cut. You think they'd sell that to him if they were on different teams? That's delusional, man.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. All of this is just fluff. It doesn't change the price of eggs. It doesn't change that gold is still gold. You can have all these nefarious activities going on around it, and you know, people.
But again, digital gold, that's BTC stick. How is gold BSV stick?
I'm using that as a metaphorical example because people don't really understand
don't use metaphors. Everything I'm saying is empirical and based on what's actually going on. You're reverting to metaphors of Formula One and gold.
Yeah, but I'm trying to explain it.
Non-gold, like digital gold was BTC's thing. BSV was supposed to be the peer-to-peer electronic cash, the full-fledged Bitcoin white paper. Now you keep using gold and Formula One analogies. Why do people need to race in Formula One?
Because it's competitive. It's competitive. Without competition, there is no race. There is no entertainment because it's controlled. It's economic competition that divides things. Without competition, you simply get collusion and centralization. You always need economic competition.
But why? I mean, Peter Thiel says that competition is for losers. What do you say to that?
I would say he's probably a communist. Not a capitalist.
Well, Whitney Webb would say he's a very powerful capitalist and not a communist. What I mean, to me, it's just words again. It's like capitalist, communist. Like, what does that really mean? I mean, Hitler was funded by Wall Street. The communists were funded by Wall Street, and America was funded by Wall Street. So, you know, that's all documented. Murray Rothbard, Professor Anthony Sutton.
Yeah, no, I get that, but that's where the reason they're all in cahoots with each other is because the money is corrupt, because they've securitized it. They've controlled money. Well, I say they've controlled money. They've converted money into currency, which they centrally control, which allows them to manipulate the markets for their own benefit. And they
changed that. How has Bitcoin changed that?
Because it's commoditized data. There is no central point of authority or control in Bitcoin.
Single thread owned by a single person, basically, or single entity in cahoots, if you want to call it that.
But it doesn't. Anybody can add hash rate to the network and extract Bitcoin from it. There's no barrier to entry to accessing Bitcoin. There's no barrier to entry to adding hash rate onto the network, because all you're doing is contributing to the security.
I mean, if it's not like it was in 2009 where I could open my laptop and mine Bitcoin blocks with it. No, you need like industrial machinery to do it now.
Yeah, but that's an economic barrier. It's not a human barrier.
No, it is a human barrier.
It's not.
Okay, that's why Monero created their.
I could go out tomorrow and buy a single ASIC miner and add hash rate to the network. I might not win anything, but there's nothing to stop me from doing it.
Yeah, but it's like saying I could go out with a shovel tomorrow in my garden and mine gold.
Yeah. Yeah, you might not find any, but there's nothing stopping you from doing it.
Yeah, but it's retarded because if you do that, you die. Okay, there's a minimal limit. Okay, upon which it's like physically non-viable to do stuff, and that isn't artificial.
Yeah, but no, it's not physically unviable. It's capitalistically or economically unviable to do it. But that doesn't mean that there's a human barrier to entry. That's an economic barrier to entry.
It does. If I go and turn my garden into a gold mine, okay, I will die if I devote my life to that.
What? So if you dig like a million tons of gold up from your garden, you wouldn't survive on that.
No, but of course I'm not going to because there's none there. There's like micro amounts that you would need a mass spectrometer to measure.
All right, well, I wouldn't bother turning your garden into a gold mine if there's no gold there. Go and prospect for gold first.
I mean, that's why BCC was created, because they the industrial miners who were first in China and co-opted certain areas with low electricity prices and ASICs. That was around like 2014, 2015. They took control of the network via the hash rate.
They didn't take control of it.
They did.
You can't control the Bitcoin network. There's a big difference between maintaining something and controlling something.
Well, your whole shtick is that that happened, and then that's why there was the fork to Bitcoin Cash and then BSV, because some group,
there was no
group,
fork.
whether it's Bitcoin Core or Blockstream or what have you, they took control of.
Oh, you've gone again.
They took control of the BTC ticker and the trademark, and then turned it into something it shouldn't be. Like, that's your whole shtick. Like, that's what you go around telling Gareth Ike and what's his face, the Coast guy. You know, that's your routine. So you're saying no one can control Bitcoin, but then as early as like 2017, it was recognized that people were controlling Bitcoin, and then there was a fork, and then there was another fork.
There was no fork. There was no fork. It's all, like you said, semantics from those who were trying to control the narrative. There was an alternative protocol that was created, and they colluded with the exchanges to list it as BTC. That's all that happened. It's just an alternative protocol. The original Bitcoin protocol just simply continued, and it hasn't changed since its inception in 2009.
Okay, well, in that case, doesn't the price differential, what's the price of a single BSV now?
$80? Yeah, $80.99.
Okay, so $80. Let's say a brand new fresh one in an over-the-counter market, freshly mined by Kurt Wuckert, is 110. Okay, what's BTC's price? 90,000?
Something like that.
So so you're talking 700 times more.
Mm-hmm. Well, like.
So doesn't it say that
1,000 times more?
Yeah, and that the governance org, according to your description, has pretty much no reason to explain that price differential, that material risk in the UTXO chain at all, even if it's selling CBDCs to central banks and governments, while BTC has gone off and done a 700x over the top of you. Doesn't that just show that Bitcoin, as you describe it, is a failure?
Well, no. Because the price has got nothing to do with the price of eggs at the end of the day. Like, it is, you can say, gold is only worth a penny, so therefore gold has failed. Like, gold is a commodity. You either use it and it's got value, or you don't.
Gold has been around for tens of thousands of years as a medium of exchange.
Yeah, but it's established as a use case
since 2009. So I don't think that is a valid analogy. Also, because BTC marketed itself as digital gold, as a reserve asset. That was their stake. And all the BSV people went against it. But BTC succeeded in that. And now you're using that analogy when originally in the late 2010s and early 2020s, that was a no-no. Now you're trying to use it again. It's fake, man. I just smell fool's gold. You tell me gold, BSV and gold and all this. You were saying no, Bitcoin isn't gold. You lot were saying that for years. Now you want to say it is.
No, I don't want to say it's gold. Bitcoin is commoditized data. End of. There's nothing more. It's like, but because data has never been commoditized before, people don't comprehend the concept. So people are obviously going to use similes and metaphors.
No, data has been commoditized before. It's called engineering. It's called engineering document management.
That's not commoditizing data.
Yeah, it is. Okay, say
not.
no. Okay, well let me run a thought experiment past you. I find oil in the ground in Norway. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the North Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say natural gas. I find 1.5 TCF of natural gas in the North Sea in Norway. How do I turn that discovery into something I can sell to consumers?
Well, you commoditize it. So first of all, you'd have to, itemize it. So find a way of packaging it, and then you would have to uniquely identify it and sell it on the market, and then someone could use that as a either a medium of exchange or.
But if it's under like
it.
3 miles of rock, okay, it's 1.5 TCF under like half a mile of ocean and 3 miles of rock. It's not just, you do a Howey test on it. No. You drill, you test what's in there. You find its composition. You design a process unit offshore to send either a two-phase or a gas and liquid flow back onshore where it is processed at a gas terminal. Okay, you go from concept to feed to detailed design and construction through a document management system of competent professional engineers. That is already done. Okay.
Yeah, but that doesn't change what you've extracted. Oil is the.
But that's what turns what you're talking about as a commodity, which has no artificial barrier to entry. No, actually, gas in the ground under 3 miles of rock and half a mile of ocean, there's a lot of artificial barriers.
Yeah, but I said, but so long as there's no human barrier to entry,
such that gas comes out of your burner in your kitchen clean and of the right quality to cook your food, such that petrol comes out of the pump. Well, you're ignoring that completely. Okay, you're ignoring that whole intermediate step, and then that whole intermediate step is taken up by Calvin Air with BSV now, and you completely ignore that. There's no engineer that can come in and make that stuff work because Calvin's in the way, even given some of the things you're saying, which I disagree with. And you ignore it, and you just say, it exists somewhere, and therefore it's real, and blah, blah, blah. It's all numbers on computers at the end of the day anyway. And who turns it from gas in the ground to petrol at the pump or to gas in your cooker?
Well,
you're not asking a question, and you just say, it's gold, and it just exists. Okay, but a ton of unrefined ore is very different to a ton of 99.9 fine gold. A ton of unrefined ore in the ground in like Sudan or the Congo is very different. But even then, BSV people don't understand that they're selling futures contracts as gold stable coins on like secondary refined mining from a mine in like Ghana or something. And Peter Schiff was shilling that stuff at LBC 2023. Okay. But you were never asking that question then. But now you're all about the gold now.
I'm not about the gold. I'm just trying to explain it. Like you, what
I don't understand. As an engineer, my dad was a mining engineer. I used to.
You've gone again, mate.
I used to be a gas process engineer with a specialism in safety in the gas industry. Okay, where moving this stuff around is hard. Okay, you're extracting gas in somewhere like Egypt or in Trinidad. You need to cool it to minus 170 degrees Celsius and liquefy it and put it on a ship and ship it to where it needs to go. Okay, that's major engineering. You have a refrigerator. Okay, you have refrigerator units that consume the same amount of power as like York or North or Ipswich.
Yeah.
Okay, you're losing like 20% of your gas to refrigerate it, to move it around. Okay, you're not considering these logistical challenges when you're saying that Bitcoin is a commodity. Okay, to say that Bitcoin is a commodity, you need to understand everything about the commodity supply chain, the logistics of it, to be able to make that argument, because it's still all just numbers on computers. But you don't. And you make these kind of childish analogies of like Formula One and gold, which before you were like anti the gold thing, now you're pro it. It doesn't make sense. Okay, to move LNG around the world, you need like massive like artificial intelligence computers to price where those ships go, because every second in the sea you're losing the gas. Okay, that's what blockchain is for. Okay, that's what Calvin Ayre thought he would be selling it for, but he's a numpty. And you're not even asking those questions when you're making all this commodity analogy, because you're just reading off like Craig Wright's ChatGPT script. You are. I've been there, done that. Okay, you haven't.
Well,
that's the difference between me and you. I've been there in those companies where they were doing that. I knew the guy who designed the Justin model for LNG trading. He designed it on a spreadsheet. Okay, now it's a giant artificial intelligence thing. Okay, that's what you should have been asking me. You never did. Now you're trying to sell me this stuff that I grew up with since I was like 22, since like 2006, talking to me about commodities. I've worked in the...
You've gone again. I think it might be your signal.
Natural gas. That is the hardest commodity to extract, move, and sell. At the best company in the world doing it. And you're trying to argue with me about analogies of this and that. It doesn't wash, bro.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to argue. I'm trying to explain it.
This is a debate, but you're not explaining anything.
That's because you won't let me talk.
I could be explaining to you. I could explain all this stuff to you, but you never asked. Instead, it was like, no, sell this thing to this guy.
Yeah, but you won't let me explain it.
What are you trying to explain? I don't even know.
Well, exactly, because you wouldn't let me finish. I'm trying to explain how you commoditize data.
Yeah, I've worked in that industry of commoditizing the data of shipping LNG around the world.
What's that got to do with me explaining it?
It's like if you were making sense, then it would make sense, but it doesn't.
Well, you haven't even let me explain it.
What have you explained? You
Nothing.
told me digital gold, Formula One.
Yeah, because you won't let me explain it.
Is that true? Is that the real reason we're here? Because I wouldn't let you explain it. Is that really where we're at now?
Well, are you going to let me explain it? I mean, I'm more than happy to explain it if you want me to.
I think you're being disingenuous, but please continue.
All right. So, in order to make sure that a digital network or a token that is extracted from a digital network doesn't have any central point of authority, control, or failure, there are 5 elements that the network is required to have that must stay in place at all times. So the first thing is it must be distributed, and each distributed operation must be economically competitive to one another. There is no other way. Without competition, you simply get collusion and centralization. And if they're competitive, it means that if one of them is attacked and goes offline, the network continues as it was. That's absolutely essential. So you need proof of work, which is the consensus mechanism which allows those who are competing with one another to actually come together in consensus if when required, but then they go back to competing with one another, just like Formula One. There has to be some kind of consensus rule there, because otherwise criminals can conduct criminal activity, and they can post, CP up on the network, and nobody would do anything about it. There has to be consensus that can get rid of that kind of like activity and imagery being put up on the network. It doesn't mean remove it, but what it can do is it can be hashed so that nobody can see it, because nobody wants that shit on the network. So you must have proof of work consensus mechanism. That's the first one. You then must have a chain of digital signatures, because it's that chain of digital signatures that creates a private association where all the members, even though they might not know each other individually, somewhere along the chain of command, they all know someone else who knows someone else who knows someone else who knows who they are. And that means that if there is criminal activity taking place on the network, it's the users of the network who are responsible for stamping that activity out. And if you do not have a chain of signatures and there is criminal activity taking place on the network, it means that the miners are responsible for it, because there is no other way, and they're the ones who are facilitating it. So the way you move responsibility off those distributed competitive mining operations is by ensuring that there's a chain of digital signatures in place. And that means that there is no one that can do anything on the network that nobody else would know about, meaning you then have common accountability. And that's the main thing. So you have an economically competitive system with common accountability amongst its users. So it's the users who are responsible and not the miners themselves. You then just simply need unbounded scale so that limitations and restrictions can't be manufactured and the network not be manipulated. You need a fixed token supply so that there is an economic asset that the miners compete for to encourage them to operate the system, because a system is either economically competitive or centrally controlled, and to make sure it's not centrally controlled, you have an asset that these operations compete for, and they compete for it by processing transactions and building blocks. And then you just need to make sure that those elements I've just mentioned are locked and never changed. That's it. And that's how Bitcoin was made. And the only protocol that has those elements in place is BSV, right from the beginning in 2009, 3rd of January. Hasn't changed.
No, there's plenty of protocols that have those things in place, much better than BSV.
Yeah, but it has...
I don't know why you had to use that analogy again. It's like creepy. Like you move from gold to CP and all this stuff. Like why do you need to use these analogies to make your point?
Because that is something that most people are repulsed by, as they should be, and nobody wants that on the network. So therefore the miners have to...
people don't want like fentanyl dealing on the network. People don't want like corrupt FBI, corrupt DOJ involved from the beginning, CIA agents, things like that. And Craig was an NSA contractor, then did mass forgery. I don't think people want that. Okay, but you leave that out. And
yeah, but you say he did mass forgery. Where's the evidence?
Oh, you just make stuff up, bro.
Yeah, well,
I think now I'm kind of done, because I am disgusted with how you have to make your point. I tried to use like actual everything I said. I have receipts for, and anyone can ask me for them. And what I don't have receipts for, I will swear an oath to attest to. And you Formula One and gold and like gads. Okay, I think it's kind of over now, and I think you kind of made your point. You have to sink that low to make your point. I don't want to have this point. Raylene died. Raylene Wilson taught me about BSV. She was the one who put me up on this, and she actually explained it in a way that I thought I could hold my nose and make it worthwhile. But now, I think I'm done here, to be honest.
Well, that's all right. I mean, it's been a cordial conversation. I appreciate your patience. It's not like you've lost your rag or anything, so that was all right. It's been a good chat.
No, I think I did lose my rag. Knowing the history of this and knowing how you switched up the analogies to suit your point at the time, given everything that's happened now, given the questions I asked you in the text chat, which I had to ask you explicitly. You never gave me an agenda to begin with. You sent me the link late. Okay, and then from the first thing you were trolling me with like how much of a conspiracy theorist are you and all this stuff. Like, no. Okay, I've been there, done that. I was hired by the BA for a certain reason because I am that guy, and you just have to chuck in the low blows because you're a loser and you lost. Okay, bye.
See you later, mate. Have a good one. Yeah. So what Bitcoin just said in rage quit. I think that's what he has done. But I think this just simply goes to show how hard it is to actually explain what Bitcoin is, because not only does the network have to be commoditized, you've also got to deal with the paradox of the centralized starting point, because if someone can start something, it means the same thing can be started by someone else anywhere at any time, meaning there is an infinite supply, which means an economic fundamental value of zero. So how do you solve that? Well, you have to solve it over time. So first of all, you need those 5 elements in place right from the very, very beginning. But then the network has to have a common starting point. There has to be a common, reasonable and equal opportunity for anyone and everyone to start the network themselves, which is why Craig released the white paper on the 31st of October 2008, but didn't start the network until the 3rd of January 2009, because a reasonable amount of time in law is considered 2 months. So we now have 2 months and 4 days from the 31st of October to the 3rd of January 2009. And then the network has to undergo neutral organic growth. And it's this neutral organic growth that cannot be replicated. And the reason you need neutral organic growth is to encourage competition to come into the network to dilute that central point of failure. Because if you've only got one miner on the network, then that miner goes offline, the network is dead. So it has to go through this period of neutral organic growth, encouraging other operations to come into the network, but without any central point of influence. And this is what no other network can replicate. And then when you're asking, okay, well, how long does this network have to undergo neutral, a neutral organic growth phase for? Well, you just simply work out the probability. If you class every year as a turn, and you're playing 50-50 down at the casino, the first time there is a 50-50 chance of you throwing a red or a black, and then after that the opportunities will go down. So I've just got it here. First of all, it is 50-50, then it is 75-25, then it's 87 to 12.4, 87.5 to 12.5, then 93.75 to 6.25, then 97 to 3.125. Oh, actually, that's the Bitcoin halvings. Yeah, that's just pointed out to me. So 50, 25, 12.5, 6.25, 3.12, and 1.526. But after 10 years, there is a 99.9% chance that no other network will achieve that level of neutral size and growth. And that is what differentiates the Bitcoin from any other network, because anybody can create a digital protocol with those 5 elements in place, but what they can't replicate is the neutral size and growth. But after a period of 10 years, the effect that the creator of the network is going to have on the growth of the network is minuscule. It's absolutely minuscule. But it's really important that the creator come out and show and reveal his true identity, because all chains of signatures lead back to the Genesis block, which is where accountability lies. So if you now have someone saying, actually, I created that Genesis block, I can tell you where that transaction went because I'm the one who sent it and I know who I sent it to. So therefore, I sent it to this person. So if you want to know where he sent his transaction, you go ask him. And then if you want to know where that person sent their transaction, you go ask them. And then the chain continues. So the reason you've got all these criminals on the network at the moment thinking they can get away with it is because there is no one at that central starting point. Whereas the moment some one is revealed, they reveal that the chain of signatures and where they lead to. I mean, this is one of the reasons why, again, they're trying to discredit Craig, because they don't want anybody to be the creator of this network. But it's absolutely essential for the network, in order to be classified as a commodity, that the creator of the network reveal who he is, so there is common accountability. It can't have been a group, it can't have been association, it has to be a living individual, a living man or woman that first created this network. And this is why Craig didn't tell anybody about it, or didn't share with anybody about it. But then also, because the network is a commoditized network, doesn't have any central point of authority or control, it can be co-opted. And so he knew that the cabal were obviously going to do that, which is why he had to come up with an insurance policy, which was the Tulip Trust. And he called it the Tulip Trust because he was pretty sure that it would probably become the largest financial bubble in history. Like the Tulip Bubble, Tulip Mania, the very, very first, the biggest modern, the most famous bubble in modern day financial history. He called it the Tulip Trust in an ode to that. And he was going to use that in 2020 to flip the market, as when he put the notice out saying this is what we're going to do, we're going to have rolling iceberg orders and blah, 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 blah. But that would have been terrible, because if the market did flip on what one man did or said, then the cabal would just simply point the fingers at that individual and say you can't trust the technology. The entire market flipped on what one man did or said, you can't trust it. Let's get back to good old fiat currency. And those criminals who have got billions of dollars tied up in the network would have been after him, and they would have taken him out. And so he wouldn't have been able to put right his legacy, and his whole life would have been wasted. So now what we've got is Terranode coming on the network, which is going to demonstrate the utility of the network, which is the usefulness of the network. And if something is useful, it's valuable. If something is useless, it's worthless. So in my humble opinion, I actually think that Craig designed Bitcoin with a memory pool, knowing that a memory pool would suffice for global transactions, but it wouldn't suffice for the global internet. So he designed it with that memory pool, knowing that you get all these scammers and copycats copying his design, trying to force people away from using the original Bitcoin design, because that's commoditized, and therefore they're going to create their own networks like XRP and all this crap, which can't scale. But then Craig is just like, well, actually, I've got this Terranode in my pocket, and when that comes out, you are not going to be able to scale in the way that I can scale for the internet, which means we can actually use the network for HD streaming, everything that the internet does. But rather than uploading our digital content onto a corporate server that the cabal own, and therefore surrendering sovereignty of that data, we can now own and control our own digital content that we create. And we can benefit from the global sale and distribution of that through the network. That's what Bitcoin is, but it's the value is secure data. So if you have a financial transaction that you can't afford to lose because that bit of data carries with it value or represents value, then you may as well just do it on the Bitcoin network, where it can't be deleted, it can't be co-opted. And you can send that bit of value for a micro payment. That is what Bitcoin is, and so many people don't get. So we got people in the chat here. Just saying hello to everybody. I can see Smiler. I can see Jimmy1337. I can see Polish Shown 35. What's up? Obviously, what Bitcoin did. Who else have we got in there? I saw Dark to Light was in there as well. We've also got Hectormain, Sonio. Who else have we got in there? Mr. Ben. Nice one. Let's see who else we've got. They were the main chat. Cool. It's been good chatting there, guys. If I could multitask, I would be looking at the chats while I was actually going through that. Yeah, I can see dark to light in there. Just going back through the chat. It's been a good one in there. Yeah, nice one. So yeah, that's kind of it. It's been a 1:40. It's been like a movie, but I hope you enjoyed it. So we'll leave it there. I shall upload this onto YouTube for everybody else to have a listen to. So oh, actually, while we're here, let's just have a look at the figures because they're looking juicy. Come on, let's have a quick look. Ode to Coin Dance. Let's bring this up. 81. 82 according to Prev. Come on. Transactions 96. Block size 96. Oh, we got a 711 megabyte block. Approaching onto a gigabyte. Come on. Come on. 141,000 times cheaper. It's you're mining Bitcoin at a 6.9 comparable loss. All right, I always love looking at these figures, to be honest with you. Let's see what Tether's doing just quickly. Whoa, what is this? Losing its peg to the upside. Have they just pumped another shitload in? So where's that? Was that the one we saw earlier this morning? Probably. Yeah, I'm guessing so. Yeah, 120.5 to 135. Yeah, whoa. Good grief. Let's have a look at let's have a look at the price here. Compare this to Greg Coin. Oh, look at that. Look at that. We've actually got some lift off today. So what's this? So from sort of 2 o'clock this afternoon it started climbing. And it's kept on going against Greg Coin. Hey, loving that. Loving that. Let's see if we can find. There we go, against USD. Yep, that's going up. Come on. Loving that. Loving. Always puts a smile on my face. Let's have a look at Orange Gateway. Yep. Just confirming that it's been going up today. Loving that. Loving that. Yep. BSV USD on the way up. Come on. Come on. Let's have some. And last of all, we'll have a look at Live Coin Watch. Oh, was BTC? Oh, they've been pumping it. Oh, look, they've been pumping it. They're trying to get it past that paywall. Desperate to get it past that paywall. They've been pumping this because BSV's been going up. Look, that's why they've suddenly done this. No way. That's hilarious. Oh, they are getting threatened, and they haven't been able to bring the price of BSV down. Are they running out of their supplies? They're pumping Ethereum as well. Finance token. Good grief. This is hilarious. DOT up 13% today. Where's the XRP, that bad boy? Oh, it's down 7% today. Let's have a look. Oh, Uniswap up. What's this one? Electrum. Oh, my goodness me. Oh, no, that's Ethereum Classic. Ava Network. Oh, good grief. Good grief. I did actually see a video by Ryan X Charles there on Earthbucks, and he hasn't comprehended how you commoditize data either, unfortunately. But people are just going to have to learn the hard way. You know, Bitcoin is BSV, and we'll leave it at that. So there we go. Hope you enjoyed it, and as ever, be aware, take care, stay safe out there, and we will see you in the next one. Catch you later.